I'm Jen, the Oregon Trail Gen X nerd, and welcome to this series of interviews where I'd like to introduce you to the people who are working on the hashtag Save the Hunt for Ben Solo project. We are ordinary people attempting to do something extraordinary, get a movie uncanceled. It's already an extraordinary situation. Actor Adam Driver revealed that he'd recruited past collaborator Steven Soderbergh and his team to develop a cool and cost-effective Ben Solo story for Lucasfilm. It was titled The Hunt for Ben Solo, and it had apparently passed through all of the checks, including for Canon, and had begun pre-production. And then Disney CEO Bob Iger canceled it, which had never happened before. So Star Wars fans who are heartbroken and who would otherwise throw their dollars and time into Ben Solo merch and movie tickets are spending them lobbying Disney to greenlight the film. My next guest, Hannah, is someone whose work you've probably seen, even if you don't know her. She's one of the social media managers for the hashtag Save the Hunt for Ben Solo movement, and she's particularly running our fabulous Instagram account. Hannah, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And Hannah, there is strong traction across all platforms, which we hope is sending a nice clear signal that fans of Star Wars have dollars and time to invest in the franchise if Disney would only assess the market. What do you think about how our socials are going?
Well, I'd say like really well, to be honest, more than I expected. Uh, we had a couple posts on Instagram, at least, that kind of sort of breached containment and got to a lot of non-followers and like brought a lot of people onto the Instagram. So I thought that was pretty fun. Um, and just seeing the reach across all different platforms, because there's not a lot of crossover between certain like communities. So some people on Instagram aren't really in the know for what's going on Twitter or X or whatever. So being able to uh, sort of expand our reach has been really helpful and also has been met with a lot of really great reception.
Hannah, thanks so much for speaking with me. Tell me, where did your Star Wars fandom begin?
Well, I first watched Star Wars as a kid with my parents. I was around 14 when The Force Awakens came out, so I think I watched them for the first time a few years before that. But I didn't actually get into online fandom until after the Last Jedi came out, and I think also after Solo. Like I remember getting home from the theater after The Force Awakens and immediately going on YouTube to like look at all of the theories and videos of people talking about it because I really love the movie. But you know, I was in school still and I was pretty young, so I wasn't as involved in that kind of stuff as I am now. So it actually passed me by when the Last Jedi came out. So I actually did. It was a couple. I think it was a year or half a year after that I did actually watch it. I kind of rewatched all of the movies and then I watched The Last Jedi. Um, and I really loved it when I watched it. And that's sort of when I was interested in getting into online fandom and talking to other people about the movies. But then doing that, my first experience wasn't the most positive. It's scary being a kid on the internet, especially when a lot of the other people there are adults. And so, unfortunately, in my experience, I was in a situation where either nothing I had to say was really wanted to be heard or like accepted, or people were telling me what I should actually think. So that was a lot of my early experience. So when Tross happened and I didn't like it, I kind of took a significant step away from the Star Wars fandom just in general. I still would always have like, nostalgia for the earlier movies, but I needed that break. And in that time when I was taking a break is when I got into Dune. And that's probably mostly where the last few years and most of my fandom online experience has come from, has been Dune. But I have like poked back in to talk about Star Wars here and there, depending on releases.
So, one of the things that Star Wars fans sometimes have a strong opinion about is the romantic connection between the character Ben Solo and Rey. Were you a Reylo?
No, well, it's interesting because when I watched The Last Jedi, um, I before I watched it, I had seen this YouTube video. I can't remember the channel for the life of me, but they did these like sort of like funny YouTube videos about different things, and they did one about Star Wars, and it talked about The Last Jedi. And to be clear, it was a positive way that they talked about it, where calling Kylo Rey's boyfriend, and like that was actually the moment that made me want to finally do the thing and catch up on everything, because I had meant to, but it was like a matter of taking the time to sit down and do it. Because like I am a sucker for romance. I love all kinds of storytelling, but I am a sucker for that, um, especially in Star Wars. So, but then when I watched it, I was like, I wasn't a Reylo in the way that I think other people came out of it being, but I did see that there was a romance happening. Um, it's funny enough, I also actually was uh shipped Poe and Rey, especially because of that first meeting scene. That was I think those shippers are like very small, and nobody took any of them seriously. But it wasn't till like very recently that I actually would call myself a Reylo, or somebody who ships Reylo. Uh, and most of that is because of my experience in the fandom, where one of the things that I was told that I should not think is that like Reylo was okay, or that you should ship them, or I was very much like told that that was not okay and that I shouldn't do that. And so I was a kid, I was listening to all these people who knew better than me, so that's what I did. I didn't really involve myself in any of that. Like I didn't fight with Reylos, or I didn't go after Reylos, or because I know some people did that and I didn't believe in that. And I also didn't appreciate some of the stuff that very clearly was coming from a place of misogyny. Um, like I could differentiate that, uh, but I was still made to believe at the time very strongly that that was bad, and so I shouldn't like it. So I didn't even allow myself the space to consider it fully, until years later, where actually when I met Marie Claire from What the Force, and we met through Willow, and that was when I actually started engaging with Reylos and the material that they would put out in terms of fandom and analysis and storytelling. And that really resonated deeply with me, because it was a kind of way of looking at Star Wars and George Lucas's approach to storytelling in general that I'd never seen from any other part of the fandom. I'd never seen anybody else really take Joseph Campbell and his work and its influence on George that seriously, other than Reylos. So that's something that I think was like that really changed my perspective, even though I hadn't fully stepped into being a Reylo at that time still. It made me really appreciate those fans quite a lot.
On. And it's not something I'm familiar with. So for my own benefit and for the benefit of folks who might only be discovering, the sequel trilogy and what's contained in there through this, new emerging, conversation. Can you say a little bit more about that influence on George Lucas?
Yeah, so because George was writing Star Wars for a while, and he had various drafts, but I think I'll see if I can get you a clip of it, but there's a like dinner or something like that uh, Joseph Campbell's there, and George makes a speech, and he basically says that Star Wars would not exist without Joseph Campbell. And obviously people reference like, oh, it's the traditional hero's journey. Um, but of course his work goes deeper than just A Hero of a Thousand Faces, where he takes basically it's somewhat similar to Carl Jung's work in psychology, where he it's compares different mythologies and folklore, and talks about how that reflects on us as individuals and in our stories, and how there's like repeating truths and repeating truths and symbols across global mythology. And it's really fascinating stuff, and it is really I think beneficial to read that and look at the way that it influences what is now the current mythopia for us, which is Star Wars. Like Star Wars has replaced what like the pantheons are for like ancient Greek society, and that sort of thing. So all of it's there. And one of the things that uh, I mean, also one thing that's, I mean, it's sort of, it's tough because the diet actually is a concept that Joseph Campbell talks about. And I know that Ryan Johnson was reading like Campbell when he was doing The Last Jedi. I think Terrio and Abrams were as well. That's obviously where they got diet from. I'd say that Joseph Campbell, his work is way more than just a Hero of a Thousand Faces or the hero's journey archetype and journey. There's so much more to his work and the way that he talks about mythology. And I think that George is like truly a student of Joseph Campbell. He's the series the Power of Myth that is filmed, that show was filmed, that interview with Joseph Campbell, it was done at Skywalker Ranch. And Joseph Campbell spent lots of his later life before he passed away with George Lucas, and a lot of Joseph Campbell's later work, particularly talking about goddesses, um, was a huge influence on George Lucas as well when he made Willow. So he's sort of like, all his work is inherently and deeply connected to to Joseph Campbell. And so I think it's hard to really understand Star Wars and what the story means without truly taking a look at what Joseph Campbell's work is about.
So Hannah, given your experiences, which were not fully positive engaging in Star Wars fandom on the internet, what drew you to find a community to try to save the hunt for Ben Solo?
Um, it was a weird experience. Um, Basically what happened was I had a really busy day, the day that the news broke. So I didn't see anything online until the next morning when I was listening to the What the Force episode talking about it, which Marie Claire had posted the night before, and I was just listening to it in the morning, and I was absolutely like dumbfounded. I was like in shock, and immediately I've had the urge to do something about it, learn everything I can about everything that was said, and somehow get involved to help this. And I think it was like a few things that kind of contributed to that reaction. The first being, you know, my friends care about this quite a lot. But also, I've learned so much from them about it. And I know that this is truly the thing that's best for Star Wars. And every way that I've ever, like, I took time to think about it. And you can't tell more Star Wars in the future without this movie existing, this story existing. It's impossible, I think. Um, but also, I think I had enough. Like I'd had enough with Disney meddling with Lucasfilm, to be honest. I mean, first it was Willow, where I loved that show so much, but then not only was it canceled, it was also taken off of the platform completely. And I feel like it, to me at least, it was very insulting, especially to Warwick Davis, who's been a longtime collaborator with Lucasfilm. He has a long history with Star Wars, and he said that it's embarrassing when somebody asks him, a fan, like, where can I watch it, and he can't tell them. So it was, that was really really hard to go through. And then it happened again with The Acolyte, which another show that I really really loved. uh they cancel it, and also Alan Bergman canceled it, and he is a common denominator here. So I think I'd had enough, and I knew that this was where the story of Star Wars needed to head next. And I don't know, the idea that this story exists and that everyone at Lucasfilm wanted it, that Adam was passionate about it, that Soderbergh was passionate about it, that I think lit a fire for me. And I wanted to be a part of it however I could.
I had a similar experience. Like you, I hadn't heard about it the night that the interview came out. I heard about it the next day. And one of the reasons I ended up on Blue Sky, which is how I ended up being recruited to the cause, was because Soderbergh was on Blue Sky. And before I
Yes.
started, he was my first thing I followed on Blue Sky. I said, all right, I want to figure out what's going on. And in case he happens to say anything else, of course he hasn't, but if he happens to
Mm,
say anything else, I want to, hear about it right
exactly.
away. And from there discovered that there were all these, interesting people saying interesting things and feeling similarly: rage, sadness, disappointment, grief that I wasn't going to get this movie. Especially because coincidentally, I had happened to watch everything Adam Driver had ever done between
Right.
August and that interview.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been a fan. I had not been a fan either. It just had happened that I'd watched T Rose was mad, and I was like, "What? There's got to be some other magic here. Maybe it's in this guy." And so I was ready. I was ready to hear that interview and support a cause. Right. So Hannah, what keeps you in this steadily growing community of Save Ben Solo fans?
I think for me, the thing that has really kept me going has been a couple things. One, seeing the way that this has united fans that are so that seem so different and that come from so many different corners of the Star Wars fandom. And it's sort of been like something that you haven't seen since the trailers for The Force Awakens came out, where everyone was just so excited to have new Star Wars, and like it was so cool to see like what it could possibly be, and all of these like returning characters and new characters. There was just a across the board excitement, and even after The Force Awakens came out, even despite criticisms about it, it was still like it felt like the fandom was united. And it's just not been like that for a long time, um like a decade at this point, which is crazy to think. But seeing some of that camaraderie come back has been really encouraging. And also just the generally speaking, the want for this to be like maintained, this standard of kindness and community and support, uh, which is really, really reassuring, because that's been something that I feel like hasn't been as uh, hasn't been a standard in the Star Wars fandom in recent years. But also the fact that we've accomplished so much in only 3 weeks. It's crazy, and we're still growing, and there's still more to come that's planned, and we're not stopping anytime soon. So just and seeing the amount that like this is being put out there, the amount of coverage it's getting, the amount of like the different people who are talking about it who you wouldn't think would be commenting on this, it's been really, really encouraging to see.
Absolutely. And I'm going to reinforce. I'm guessing we haven't talked about our ages or backgrounds too much, but I'm guessing I'm at least 20 years older than you are. And so I'm very much like a product of the original episodes
Mm-hmm.
4, 5, and 6. And what's really interesting is, for example, when folks share about themselves on the Discord server, when we introduce ourselves, a lot of people are saying, I came in with the prequels, which I have to admit, I was a personal hater on. I was never a hater online, but I was not a fan, but I like them now because now I have some
Mm,
perspective. I understand that they were not made for me. They
mm-hmm.
were made for, younger people. And when I watch them through that lens, I can enjoy them very much. And
Mm-hmm.
so, to your comment around, bringing a whole bunch of people with different perspectives together under one banner with one purpose,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I'm very much seeing that as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're in charge of our Instagram. Tell us about this commitment that you made to support the movement's social media. What led you to step into that role?
I'd found the Discord through X, and it was sort of early on in the inception of it and the community, and we weren't really organized at the time. We were still talking about like, oh, we need to set up this social media account, and I'd had free time, so I was like, oh, well, I could set it up. If somebody else wants to take the reins, that works for me. But it did sort of become my baby after that, and I just sort of and I'm very committed to it now. Like I have like a very clear vision for the Instagram and what I want to achieve for the campaign with it. So yeah, it's been really fun taking on this responsibility.
And can you tell us a little bit more about how you've sort of learned and maybe some lessons you've learned along
Mm,
the way managing the Instagram?
yeah. Well, one of the bigger early things that I was trying to figure out was Threads, and I'm still trying to figure that out because it's not. I'm very familiar with Twitter, but transitioning to a new platform and figuring that out has always been a little bit difficult for me. Like I do have a Blue Sky, but I'm still not as active on that. Um, but I'm like trying to actively learn Threads and how to best connect with other fans. Um, but Instagram itself, I do have some experience with just for my own personal Instagram and stuff for my university or whatever. Um, but I think it's been interesting because seeing which posts reach the most people and resonate the most, and figuring out ways to better figuring out ways to better communicate initiatives that we're doing and events that we have, um, and finding out ways to engage with the fans, because I think that's the biggest thing. Is I didn't want the Instagram to just be, oh, I come in when we have something going on and I post it and leave. I want it to feel like we're really growing something together and that everybody involved has a valued role, even if you just leave a comment of support. If you go comment on Bob Iger's post or Alan Bergman's post, uh, like every little bit that everyone on there does means something and is really important. And I try to sort of uh, make that as clear as possible, that the fans are or the fans are the people who are really moving this forward. So yeah.
Yes, and so a message to folks who are not necessarily yet following us, please do. All of these socials will
Mm-hmm.
be linked in the description box of the video. So please go give them a like, share them, tell your friends to go and check us out. Because the greater the reach, the algorithm picks it up and spreads it even
Mm-hmm.
further. So Hannah, tell us about some of your favorite interactions or posts so far on the socials.
Um, my favorite post, at least right now, still, it's the one where I use the Devil Wears Prada audio where Meryl Streep is like, "Oh, Andrea, don't be ridiculous. Everybody wants this." And then you have the clip of the from the meetup at the New York headquarters where everyone's like, everybody wants this. And then it sort of like cuts to like all of the different stuff that has been going on with the fandom. I think that one's really fun. It definitely went like it got a bunch of views, more than I was expecting in like a really short amount of time. So I think it was
Nice.
like one that really connected with people. It's just so funny.
It is, and to highlight something that's important. So not only are we on social media, there are people who are doing things live in person. As you said, there were people who went to New York. One of our wonderful cosplayers, was there at Disney Studios in
Yeah.
Burbank, and you're trying to feature all of those
Hmm.
live things that are happening as well.
Yeah, and I think like making it as fun as possible. Like for the solo protest at Disney headquarters in Burbank, I tried to use like a video or I tried to use the audio from Adam on SNL where he's like, "Hey man, you look like a Star Wars fan," um, and just like things like that that are fun for fans. So it's entertaining to watch, and it just shows that there's so much passion and love that goes behind all of this. Because at the end of the day, like we're going to get this movie made, but at the same time, just being able to appreciate it, like the community that's built behind this, and the fact that we all are Star Wars fans, that I think in itself is a gift. So I want to try and infuse the socials with as much as that as possible.
So what do you want people to know about the hashtag Save the Hunt for Ben Solo social media channels?
Um, well, first off, please follow, subscribe, like, share. That every bit of that helps. But also, I'd say they're the best place to keep up to date with the fan events that we have going and other initiatives that we have planned. Um, it's also a really good place to interact with other fans because I think that's something that we've seen uh, from the Discord to like all different platforms. It's bringing fans together who didn't know each other previously and now they do, and they're like forming really strong bonds. So I think if you want to connect with other fans and like other fans specifically who are also really passionate about this project and about the character of Ben Solo, then that's a place to go to find that community.
And I'll share that for me, it has been fantastic to be part of a group of people who want to talk about Ben Solo. I mentioned before, I am an old school Star Wars fan because I was born in the 80s. And as I've said in another video, I wanted to meet Ben Solo my whole life because, of course, I grew
Mm-hmm.
up in Leia and I didn't know their children.
Yes.
I didn't know their son was going to be named Ben, but we knew that was going to happen. That was just part of
Mm-hmm.
the legend. And so to have a group of people who are just as excited as I am to find out what happened, what happens to him, and agreeing that it
Hmm.
wasn't quite, quite the way that, the Rise of Skywalker
Yeah.
ended. Because it wasn't going to meet our needs for getting to know him and
Hmm.
finding out what he's like. It's been wonderful, truly wonderful
Hmm.
to be around those folks. So, Hannah, in addition to planning events and activities, what do you enjoy contributing to the hashtag Save Ben Solo movement?
Um, aside from having a lot of fun on the social media, it's also inspired my own creativity because I used to do a lot of like theories and lore related stuff for Willow and Dune. Um, but I never had the inspiration to do that with Star Wars. I think mainly because of where things lead or end off. Everything sort of leading to that just didn't spark a lot of um, creativity for me. So the fact that this movie exists and that Lucasfilm really wanted it, it opened up a lot of that inspiration for me again to look at like what Lucasfilm has been building and create like theories around that and build discussions around that. Because I think one misconception that I've seen some people have for this movement is that it is just Reylos. And obviously, like Reylos are a huge part of it and a very passionate part of it. But even for Reylos, that relationship is not the only thing that makes them care about Star Wars. And for me, like I love Star Wars and I love the lore behind it, both in the EU and in canon. And I love the way that Joseph Campbell fits into it and the stuff that he writes about it and how that is reflected. I love the way that Kurosawa influences Star Wars. And so I love to be able to talk about that. And I think feeling the passion to do that again, because I haven't really seen a lot of like, let's talk about the theories of what comes next. I haven't seen a lot of that in Star Wars fandom in like a decade, really. So for myself to feel the passion to create more of that, I'm hopeful that that will just continue and that more people will feel like they want to talk about Star Wars again and like get excited about the story and the lore and where things are going. But yeah.
Thank you. So, can you give us a little preview for folks who might be curious about following you on your
Ooh.
channel?
Yeah, so I'm very new. I started a YouTube channel called Theories of the Force, and my first video is talking about how a very popular theory from the Ahsoka show is that it's introducing Abeloth, who is a character from the EU, and she's also called the Mother. She fits into it with like the ones from like the Mortis arc on the Clone Wars, so like the father, the son, and the daughter. And um, I like the more I was thinking about it, the more I was like, there's things in other material from like canon that actually seems to be hinting to this way, way before Ahsoka. Like back to like the Aftermath trilogy and like the early stuff that they were putting out in like promotion for, because usually when each trilogy movie would come out, there would be certain published material that would be like associated with it or part of that buildup. And so the Aftermath trilogy was part of that for The Force Awakens, also the Tarkin novel, just like a couple things. Rebels has things in it as well that seem to be setting up that Palpatine likely was being called to by Abeloth or whatever Canon's version of the mother is. And that motivated a lot of what he's done. And we're seeing that continue with Baylan and Ahsoka. And I think personally, and I have like more videos talking about the Force and the nature of the dark side and how Abeloth would fit into that. But I think that it's possible the way that Dave wants it to go as the creative like head of the direction of Star Wars. I think what he wanted was for the dyad to be what would ultimately like put a stop to Abeloth, and that she's being introduced in Ahsoka and in Dave Filoni's movie and all of these other things, but she's only going to be temporarily stopped because that's how it is in the EU. You can usually she's only temporarily stopped, and then eventually you're going to have to face her again. But I think that she's being set up for a post Tross villain, like a like big bad, and that the thing that Filoni wants, like I said, is for Ben to come back and for him and Rey to be that dyad, that power in the Force, to be what eventually stops Abeloth. So that's where my mind's going.
Excellent. Wow, I will look forward to watching your analysis on that. That will be interesting. Thank you. Thinking about the future then of
Mm,
Star Wars sequels is something that folks can find on your channel.
yes, definitely. Like what's coming next, like the things we can most recently look forward to and how they fit into it. But then what does the future of Star Wars post The Rise of Skywalker look like in the future, beyond that point in the timeline?
So Hannah, is there anything else that you would like the world or maybe Disney to know about the movement to get The Hunt for Ben Solo made?
It's not going anywhere. We're growing every day with fans from all corners of the fandom and all across the globe. This is really just the beginning, and we're in it for the long haul. So even if we don't get any confirmation or news this year, we're going to be here in 2026. We're going to be here in 2027. We're not going anywhere.
So join us.
Exactly. Come join. The Hunt for Ben Solo needs you. Join
Join
me.
me, please.
Take my hand.
So shall we get going?
Mhm.
All right. My next test. That's the blooper. Excellent. All right, let's try again.